Hey guys, welcome back. Tisha here, back with another big love review. I want to start off by saying number one, happy day of thanks, and number two, happy birthday to my son. Because by the time this is up, it will be his birthday. So, my love, if you're watching, happy birthday. Go ahead and do me a favor and hit the like button as we jump into it. So, we found out some very crucial things during this episode, and I found myself a little annoyed with myself during this episode because, y'all, as much junk, 4 episodes, I have been saying that I can't stand Nikki. But this episode right here had me side-eyeing Bill and had me giving kudos to Nikki. I know. But we'll get into it. So the episode begins with Bill in the office refiling his prescription for his Viagra when Barb calls trying to figure out where he's at because he's late for this event that involves one of the city councilmen. So he finally gets there, introduces himself, and the guy doesn't seem to remember him or be interested in talking to him. That's until Barb starts to speak. She starts to talk about how she's a teacher and she's touching him ever so gently on his hand. And him and the wife are intrigued with what she's saying. Barb is doing her thing. She has the councilman's attention and she has Bill's too. Like you can see even when he walks up, how he's in awe of her, how he's mesmerized by her, how he's enjoying watching her command the outdoors because they're not in a room. I say the room, but y'all get it. Watching her, take charge. While that's going on, we're at the grocery store where we see Nikki and Marge shopping together. Nikki is still irritated by the fact that Barb didn't ask her permission to go to work. So they're walking down the aisles and Nikki is venting and she's complaining and she's talking about the value of selfishness and all these other things while her boys are knocking things off of the shelves, tearing up stuff in the store, and Marge, who has a toddler in the shopping cart area and another one strapped to her, is bending down, cleaning up the things that they are knocking down. I personally wouldn't be picking up any of those things because her boys, Nikki's boys, are old enough that they should have known not to touch things, number one. And number two, that they could have picked it up themselves since they want to knock it down. I remember when I was little, we were not allowed to touch things in the store. Like we were told, you look with your eyes, not with your hands. And when I see stuff like this, it reminds me of why. Because they were tearing up the store. Like it's levels to it. Literally, there was a trail where they were at. And Marge just kept bending down and picking things up and picking things up. Marge is like, I hear what you're saying, but don't you think you were a little hard on her? Aren't we supposed to support her? And Nikki says, yeah, but you haven't been doing it as long as I have. She then complains about how even right then they're food shopping and she can't remember the last time Barb pushed a cart, trying to imply that Barb, hasn't done anything and Barb hasn't went food shopping when later on we see that she does do it. She just does it on her own. You're saying that about Barb, yet we don't see Nikki put anything in her cart. We see that Nikki's cart has items in it, but the whole time during this scene, she hasn't put a single thing in her cart. She keeps telling her sister wife what to do. Grab the saltine crackers, not the ones with a whole bunch of salt. Grab that. No, get the raisins. No, not those ones, the white raisins. Like she's very particular about different things, but she's not doing anything herself. It could be because she was on that side, but you see that the girl's struggling, so why not go and help her? She then tells her, I'm going to go down another aisle. Can you watch the boys? And she walks off. Once again, showing that she's doing the very thing that she's complaining that Barb does, which is boss people around and be inconsiderate. Looks like Barb isn't the only boss lady. On to Barb and Bill. Barb and Bill really were on some other stuff this episode that kind of had me being like, okay, Barb, I'm rooting for you. I like you, but you can't do things that show that you're being selfish too. So Barb and Bill leave the event. They're talking about how neither the councilman or his wife could keep their eyes off of Barb and off her dress. Bill's like, "Is that a new dress?" She's like, "No, I've had it. I just haven't, had anything to wear it to." Barb says, "I thought that, his wife was going to get on her hands and knees and look under my dress to see what I had under it." And Bill's looking at her like, yeah, she's not the only one who wanted to get on her hands and knees and look under that dress. It's HBO, y'all. HBO. Next thing we know, Bill has pulled over into the grass. His car is facing like this. The roadway is like this. We see cars driving by. They're further up into the grassy part, and we hear moans. And we can say it's safe to say that there was a climax involved. Barb, after she's finished, is shaking her head, saying that this is Marge's night. Barb, don't act like you're concerned now. You done already got what you needed off of him, and now you're worried about Marge's night. So he's like, yeah, I know. I think part of that wasn't just because of what they did, but I think it's because they were enjoying each other's company and they didn't want to end it, but they knew once they got back to the house, it would end. So they get back to the house and he looks like he wants to stay with Barb. He's looking at her, Barb's looking at him. He ends up leaving Barb and going to the other house. Now, Barb's house is nice and peaceful. He heads over to Marge's house and there's rock music playing. She's got a kid on her hip. She's walking around with a shirt and underwear. Her house looks very unkempt. She tells him, "I got a burger on the table." And she goes upstairs. Because he was able to do what he did in the car with Barb and he didn't need any assistance, throws the empty bottle of Viagra in the trash. He tosses it like he's throwing a basketball. But I couldn't help but notice that he quickly covered it up with other items that were in the trash, which of course means that none of his wives know that he's been taking Viagra. But I guess he feels like he didn't need it for Barb and he already put in his other prescription, so he could throw that empty bottle away. So as he's waiting for Marge to come back down and warm up his burger, he's watching Barb as she's in the kitchen and she's drinking her water or whatever, and he's looking at her. He's enamored by her. You can feel the love with them in that moment. Like I could say, okay, like he really loves this woman. So it's the next morning. Barb is getting ready to head out to her job when she gets a phone call from Bill. Keep in mind, Barb is not in the kitchen by herself. Marge is in the kitchen with her. So he's like, hi. She's like, hi. He says, I enjoyed last night. She's like, yeah, I did too. I thought I made it up. He says, what time are you taking lunch today? I said, oh, he wants a round two. She's like 1. He says, because I want to see you again. Can you meet me later? She's like, meet you where? She's like, where? He says, here. She says, okay. And she gets off the phone. I said, Bill must have really performed because Barb can't get off that phone fast enough to set up the plan in motion to get these people out of her house. But it's kind of hard to do that and hard to plan meeting up back at your house when Marge is always at her house. Isn't that the same thing that Robin used to do to Mary? Y'all, this show came out before the Browns came out. But when we read the book, one of the things that was said by Mary is that Robin used to come over a lot with her kids, even on nights that it was her night with Cody. And they would watch movies and do things together. I find that kind of funny how here you have Marge, who's the younger, prettier wife, who does some of those same things. Just pointing it out there. So Barb tells Marjorie, like, you can't just, focus on Bill, all the time. And then when he's not with you, you just stay over here and you just sit around waiting on him. What you need to do is you need to focus on the things in your house, like unpack, make your house a home. Marge didn't really want to go, but she kind of feels like she's being kicked out, which she in essence is. And she's like, walking past, and Nikki's like, "What you doing out here?" And she says, "Barb kicked me out and told me to get a life." And Nikki's like, "That's messed up." I mean, that's not really what she said, but okay. Nikki then blames it on the work. She's like, "I knew this was going to happen. It's because of her job. It's just like I thought it would be because of this job. Now she doesn't have any time for us." No, it's not the job. It's your husband. So we see Bill and Don at the job talking about the councilman and how they're going to work out things as far as him and the anti-polygamous and whatever else thing, right? Didn't quite understand that. Somebody explain it to me if you can, because I was like, what are they talking about? Anyways, they end up calling the attorney general's office, acting like they're one of the families that is being swindled by Roman. So they're saying, my mom is doing this. And he's like, okay, who's your attorney and all these other things. So long story short, the person on the phone wants them to come down, talk to them face to face, because they've been trying to get into Juniper Creek forever. Well, we know that they can't do that because these aren't the actual people. So Dawn takes the number and says, "Can I have your direct line? I'll get back to you with that attorney's information," right? End scene. We go back to Barb. Barb is at her house ready for her lunchtime quickie. She locks her screen door. We see her close the blinds, and she's waiting in her bra and underwear for her husband. She then, because she's waiting for a little bit, goes from her room to the staircase, and she brings a blanket with her, and she's sitting on the stairs, dripped in her blanket, as he opens the door. The next thing you know, they are making out. They start flinging each other against the walls, knocking stuff down off the walls, ripping open shirts and pulling up stuff. And they're leaning on the door to the pantry. And next thing you know, they fall in. I think it's safe to say that they had sex in the pantry. I'm personally not upset. Let these married people enjoy themselves. But keep in mind, more than likely, it's not Barb's day and they're being sneaky, because this is not what they're supposed to be doing. Well, all that's going on, Nikki and Marge are out and about spending money that they don't have. It sounds like they're trying to fix up Marge's house, because we hear them talking about towels and things of that nature that Marge needs to get. Marge is over it. She wants to go back to the house. She needs to lay back down. But Nikki's like, "No, we already got the boys in here. It's a lot to put them in and out. Let's just keep going." So as they're driving, Nikki spots Bill's car. And he waves at her and keeps going. I said, "Oh, Lord, this is about to be good." Because how are you going to explain that? Let's jump to Ben. Bill needs to have a talk with his son, because the things that he is experiencing are things that happen naturally with teen boys. And he doesn't know that it's a natural thing. He's to the point where he feels like he needs to sign up for seminary class because he doesn't feel pure because of the urges that he's having in his body. He's at one point in high school wood shop where he's around a whole bunch of teenage boys. And of course, they all have hormones. And as the instructor is talking about the wood, and we see a hole being drilled into the wood based on his expression and the sounds and the way that the camera zooms in as the instrument is going up and down in the wood, it's going faster, it's making a certain sound. And it's clear what Ben is thinking. At one point, he gets an erection, and his friend notices that he gets an erection because he sees him cover himself up with a binder. We then later see him tell the same friend that was trying to feel on him when they went to the movie, when they went to the drive-thru, that he's gonna be a part of seminary, that he's gonna go join seminary. It's not a big deal, it's only an hour a day. And she's like, please don't do it, don't be a part of it, because what's gonna end up happening is they're gonna brainwash you and make you feel like your body is dirty and like what you're feeling is wrong. He tells her that he's not gonna go, because she's like, please say you won't go, please. And he's like, okay, I won't go. But he ends up going anyways. We see him in the meeting and he gets congratulated by the instructor for choosing the right. I wonder what they tell these young men about their natural urges. And hearing him say that, and her saying they're going to brainwash you and make you feel like what you're feeling is wrong, makes me wonder what really happens in those seminary classes. Let's get back to the store. So Bill comes back to the store. And he's extra happy because, he got that in with his wife. And, he's feeling like, oh, ecstasy. But it doesn't last long, because Wendy, the lady that wrote the $20,000 check for the 15% to one of Roman's goons, she's asked to speak with him. Now, Don tries to stop him and tell him something, but he's like, no, everything's good. He goes to talk to her. So she's like, I practiced how I was going to say this. I saw the Embry's at Applebee's on Saturday when I was with my mom. I was at the salad bar with my mom when they came in with 2 other women. She gives him this look like, 2 other women, like she's suspicious, Bill's like, okay. She says something wasn't right. Something not natural. I could tell. So when the 2 ladies went to the restroom, I followed them. I said, isn't this the same girl that I was to make feel bad for the other day when she was forced to write a check and she was sitting there trembling and crying and boohooing and all that stuff because the yellow Hummer pulled up to the store and made her write the check? And now her little nosy tail, who just got pulled up on and was crying and boohooing, is in there following people to the bathroom? Wendy, mind your business, girl. I said, okay, you want to listen? Be careful, because you might end up finding out something you don't want to hear. She goes, I know it was wrong, but I had to. And guess what? They were talking about whose turn it was to cut Mr. Embry's hair. I was Bill in that moment, because Bill's like, okay, they want to cut his hair. What's the big deal? Not whose night it was to sleep with him, not whose bed he was going to be in, but whose turn it was to cut his hair. Bill's like, I don't understand. She says, they're polygamists. Bill's like, you don't know that. Maybe they're his sisters. They could be his aunts or his nieces. You don't know what it is. I know what I saw. Not only is it against the church, but it's against the law. I get that you want to run and tell your boss this, but I've never been the person that gets into other people's business. I've heard and seen certain things from coworkers before, and guess what? It's none of my business. As long as you aren't hurting anyone, then I don't have anything to say about it. Whether or not I agree with it, it doesn't matter. Whether my beliefs are their beliefs, it doesn't matter. If they're not hurting anyone, it's none of your business. But Wendy is bothered. Wendy's extra bothered. So Bill's like, what happens in other people's bedroom doesn't concern me, as long as they're doing their jobs. He was like, Don's treated you very well. He's treated you with respect. As a matter of fact, didn't his wife hire you? He's like, despite what you're saying, Don isn't who you say he is. And she's looking confused, but he just wants to leave it at that. We're at Juniper Creek. Roman and his sons are still trying to dig through Bill's stuff, but apparently Albie hasn't done his due diligence. I think that's his name. He hasn't done his due diligence. and he hasn't gotten the right information. So Roman is pressed to know exactly what is being brought into the Home Plus stores. He wants to know the earnings of both of those stores. And he is mad because his son filled out the wrong paperwork because he gave him the wrong stuff. He didn't give him the numbers. He wants all of the numbers. So Rhonda is listening to the iPod as she's singing the song, saying, "You're so vain, probably think this song is about you." And she's singing it like she's supposed to be listening to this stuff when we know they don't want them listening to that type of music. Roman's son looks on, ends up going into the room. So we later see him get demoted by his father, saying, you have too much on your plate. I shouldn't have gave that to you. I should have gave that task to someone else. Rhonda tries to comfort him after he leaves, saying, I'm not good with numbers either. And he shouts at her. And she looks back at him as she's about to leave, and she's like, "Don't you ever shout at me again." I said, "Okay, Rhonda. Rhonda, you're a little weird, but you're not putting up with people's mess." So Nikki is officially gone on a hunt. She's investigating because Bill has come home with flowers for each one of his wives, and he's in too good of a mood, and she's suspicious to the point where she calls the payphone at Juniper Creek to question people. She asks to speak to Joey's wife, right? So she feels like Bill's been too happy. She thinks he's seen, wait, was it Joey's wife? Or was it another lady and it just got back? I think it was Joey's wife because the lady was pregnant. I hate to say that they all look alike, but I'm a little confused. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was Joey's wife. And she's like, "I think that he's courting a fourth wife because he's doing some of the same things that he did when he started courting Marjorie without us knowing." She then, after she gets off of that situation and tells the lady don't say anything, before she does that, she puts her concerns and says Barb is concerned that she's going to have to, figure out a way to work this thing out because Barb is so resistant to change. So she's appearing like she's happy about it, but I don't really feel like Nikki's happy about it. Y'all tell me if Nikki's really happy about it. Is Nikki the one who really, really believes this stuff? Because sometimes she doesn't come across that way. So let me know down below. So she's like, I'm just happy because I'm bored. I'm bored with those two girls. So, I think another one will be good. And as she's saying it, I'm like, okay, Nikki, say what you want to say, but don't put Barb into this situation if you haven't seen this happen with this supposed fourth, right? I just feel like I don't like when they lie on each other. So as I said, before she gets off the phone, she says, "Don't tell anybody." We later see Marge in her house, finally unpacking some stuff. We see her looking at a yearbook as she begins to cry. I don't know why she started crying and what the correlation was because she was looking at like a young man's picture. And I just don't know what that story is, but it makes me wonder how long she's been out of high school because she seems very young. She ends up making friends with the neighbor next door, who we find out does not have any kids and builds doll houses, beautiful ones, in her spare time to pass time and to kind of relax. Later, that same neighbor comes over to Marge's house to give her some design books so that she can set up her house. And she's invited in by Marge. I said, this isn't going to be good at all. Back to Bill. Bill is trying to get another sneaky link with Barb, right? So he calls her while she's at work and says, "I want to see you." She's supposed to have lunch with another teacher, but he's like, "No, cancel it and meet me." So we see them meet up at the motel and they have sex. And after they're done, Barb says, "I feel like, what are we doing here?" And he's like, "What do you mean, what are we doing?" She's like, "We're having an affair." He don't pay any attention to that because he just wants to enjoy the moment. So he gets up, pulls out the stereo, then grabs a tape, puts play, and you hear, "I want to know what love is. I want you to show me." And she starts to cry and they have sex again. I said, what is the significance of this song? Is this like their wedding song or something? Because she got real emotional when she realized what song it was. So they get it in again. She can't find her necklace. But he ain't worried about it because they got it in again. They run out the room. They're done. After that, he heads back to the store. He's in a great mood again. Nikki then calls him, you don't have to keep secrets from me. I'm on your side. Like, and I can be the one to break the news if you want me to. And he's like, Nikki, what are you talking about? And rather than telling him what she's talking about, what her suspicions are, she hangs up the phone on him. We see Wendy. Wendy's in the bathroom and she decides this is a great time while washing her hands to confront one of Don's wives. And she goes, what you're doing is wrong. And I got my eyes on you. And I want you to know that you can't fire me. I know my rights. And his wife is like, why would we fire you? Why would we do that? I wouldn't want to do that. You're the best little junior bookkeeper that we've ever had. And she walks off, leaving Wendy speechless. But Wendy, you need to chill out, girl, because you're doing too much. It's not that serious. Really. Barbara's at home, vacuuming her house when Nikki appears. And this is one of those things that get on my nerves about Nikki, but Nikki's like the plague to me. She is. But what can you say? So she's like, we got a problem. Look out the window. And that's when you see Marge with her 2 kids leaving the neighbor's house. So they have a talk and Barbara's like, I'm not going to tell you who your friends can be. I just need you to please be careful. Nikki says, yeah, because you're the weakest link. Barb is a good liar. And Barb's like, what do you mean? She's like, I mean, you're a good liar. You lied so effortlessly with the neighbor. You're a pro. Nikki, you lie effortlessly too about some things. One of those things being your debt. I haven't forgot and I'm waiting for it to come back up. So we later see Barb. She goes to her room where there's a box. She opens up the box. It's the necklace that she lost in the hotel. Meanwhile, Nikki's in her room and she's washing her hands with some soap. But Nikki looks at the soap like so many people would. You know what you use, you know what you don't use, and it's a different type of soap. She looks at the soap and she sees the imprint in the soap. She then decides that she's going to dig into the trash can and look at the wrapper that the soap came out of, and she realizes that it's the wrapper for the hotel, motel, whatever it is. So the next morning, she goes over to Marge's house because Marge and Bill apparently were seeing each other behind their backs before they told the wives. And she says, did y'all have premarital relations before you got married? And Marge is like, no. She's like, look me in the eyes and tell me that. And she struggles to look her in her eyes, which means they did. She says no, but her eyes say yes. So Nikki's like, okay, so this is proving Nikki's point. We see Bill, who gets a call from Joey, who gives him the attorney's name that's working on the people who's suing Roman. Joey gives him the address and a list of some stuff. And then as he's about to get off the phone, he congratulates him on finding a 4th wife because Nikki told Wanda that's what he was doing. We don't see the end of that conversation. Back to Nikki. She's in Barb's kitchen as Barb walks in the house, tells her that she didn't want to pull her into anything, but Bill's changing and she knows he's dating a 4th wife and he's having sex with her because he had relations prior to getting married to Marge. And he had relations prior to getting married, and it wasn't, she's not going to say who it was, but it wasn't her, and she knows it wasn't Barb, so it had to be Marge. I said, okay, Nikki. So Barb knows she's the person that he's been seeing. And rather than say anything, she's like, so what do you want me to do with this info? And Nikki's like, we got to stop it and find out who this is, who this woman is. We don't want her in our house, bringing this sin into our house. I said, this is a mess. Marge is unloading groceries because she walks out of that conversation, goes to her station wagon to grab groceries as the neighbor approaches and grabs the groceries out of her trunk. I said, I know that you mean well, neighbor lady, but I need you to ask me if I would like assistance before you grab stuff out of my trunk and start walking toward my house. So nice of you to help, but we're not that familiar. So she talks about, how sad it is that Marge lost her husband in the Gulf War. I said, not the Gulf War. As soon as she said it, I said, not the Gulf War. I don't remember the year, but I know that's the 1990s. How did you lose your husband in the Gulf War and you had kids with these children? I said, this dingbat. The girl is slow. This is why Barb didn't want her to be over there in the first place, because she's not good at this stuff. So we see Barb later go to Marge and be like, look, you got to do better. Why would you tell her that your husband died in the war? And she's like, well, it was better than just being called the babysitter. And she's like, hun, the Gulf War was 15 years ago. She's like, I was lonely and I didn't know what else to do. And she's like, you're going to be lonely. That's the sacrifice that we make. We got to stick with it because there's nothing else that can bring us these rewards. This is it. I said, that doesn't sound really hopeful to me. I wouldn't want to be told that. At night, we see Bill call Barb. They talk about how they can't stop thinking about each other, even though it's Nikki's night. He says, can you meet me in a half an hour? She says no at first, but they end up meeting up at a hotel again. Nikki overhears him saying, I'll meet you in a half an hour. She's like, where are you going? He lies and says, I'm going to the office. Nikki's smart. Nikki said, you're not about to play me. Nikki saw him on the phone. Nikki picks up the house phone, hits the redial button. Who does it call? It calls Barb's house. Sarah answers the phone. So she's looking at the window as she's talking on the phone to Sarah. She sees Bill's car leave, and then she sees Barb's. And I said, so you couldn't even be smart enough to let enough time go in between before you decided to just follow right behind him? Like, girl, you making it extra obvious. So she's like, can I speak to your mom? She was like, oh, mom's gone. I don't know where she's going, but wherever she is, she was acting all giddy and gross. And she even asked me if I could get her lip gloss. So we know what they do, because she shows up at the hotel in the room and he's waiting for her. Later that night, Teeny goes to turn off the TV and she feels a presence and she looks, and it's a man standing at the back door. You hear the girl scream. Sarah is calling for Nikki as her and Tina run over there. They say that the man is out there, and Nikki is fearless. Nikki wastes no time. She tries to call Barb. Of course, neither one of them answers. And she goes outside to see her brother along with two other guys. He's mad because he ended up getting in trouble with his dad. So Benny comes out and tells him to go away. He's like, go away. He walks up to Benny, puts his hand like this around Benny's neck, like he's about to choke Benny. Necky's like, if you don't get out of here, I'm going to tell Papa. This is when we hear something that I kept thinking may be a possibility, but he said it for me, which kind of confirmed it for me. He says, you were nothing till you married Bill. Nothing of no earthly consequence. Now look at you, spreading around like Mrs. Home Plus. Bill took you in to get a loan from Papa. Didn't you know that? You're just collateral. I said, what? Say what? I said, what? Nikki took it like a G. Nikki says, don't think, Albie. That's not what you're good at. Roughing up teenagers and scaring women is what you do. I said, okay, Nikki, I got to go up for you in this moment. Because the way that he spoke to her and the way that she held it together and the way that she didn't crack and the way that she didn't cry while he called her out and said what he said and basically let her know that Bill didn't want her, that Bill took out a loan, and as a result of that loan, the promise was that he would marry her. That would have hurt me. If it hurt Nikki, you couldn't really tell. She had a little slight difference in her eyes, but she didn't give too much. And she was like, are you going to show me what you're made of? She's like basically daring him to put his hands on her. She tells him to take your one testicle and fly back to your cave. She says, if you ever show up here again and harass this family, I swear to God, I will kill you. She then walks up to the guy who scared Teeny and she slapped the mess out of him in his face. I said, darn it, I like Nikki. I said, and just like that, I like her. I hate it. I hate that for this one episode. I like her. Because Nikki did the very thing that Bill should have done. She stood up for her family and she protected those kids. And because she protected those kids, and because she called his bluff, and because she slapped the other one that scared Teeny, I like the fact that she did that. Let them know that they're not going to intimidate you. I said, okay, Nikki, you got me for this one episode and one episode only. I don't know what's going to happen next. we later see Bill, Barb, Nikki, Marge, Ben, some of the kids, and they're talking. And Nikki is like, he was here, but my dad didn't send him. He was, acting like a loose cannon. Barb is happy everybody's okay. And then Nikki says, I want to bring another soul into the family. She's like, I have something to say. I thought she was going to say, I know what you guys were doing. But instead, she said, I want to bring another soul into the family. It's crickets at first. She says, it's time now. I've been holding off. Bill, of course, is happy about this. He says, as your husband and father-to-be, I'm happy for us to add another member to our holy family. Marge hugged her and says, congratulations. And Barb sits there looking hurt. And I said, I wouldn't be surprised if that was a dig to Barb, because it was going to hurt Barb. Because Barb can't do that. And she knows how much he wants kids, because she was watching him earlier on as he was outside playing with the kids. Barb looks at Nikki and says, I love you, Nikki. And Nikki says, I love you too, Barb, very much. And I was like, ooh. And that's how it ended. Y'all, these things, this had a lot going on in the episode. But the fact that that one little scene made me for a split second like Nikki, I'm wondering what else is going to happen. You guys let me know what you thought of this episode. I hope you all enjoy this time with your family. For those of you who do not have family around you, I know that the holidays kind of, bring that out, and there will be some people that are missing for some of us. Try hard to think of the good memories. I know that's what I'm going to do to try to, get through the day, just because it's always a mix of emotions for me. It's been that way for several years now. And I just feel like, because of the time and holidays always bring on that heaviness, that what makes it a little bit more bearable for me is thinking of the good. So thank you guys so much for your time. Until next time.